Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. This unit was particularly useless in the last big tournament. The last S tier NAC5, the Elite Department Cup 5, basically had no play from this unit, and it's kind of a surprise because this is basically one of the main units in the game of Age of Empires, and to not see it basically at all for an entire tournament is extremely surprising. However, there's a lot of good reasons as to why, and I'm going to go ahead and break down those reasons and show you guys why the archer and the crossbow barely saw any use in NAC5. Now, as you guys all know, archer line, one of the main lines of Age of Empire 2 units. Like, it's basically number 1 or number 2. There's the cav lines, light cav, knight to paladin, and then you have archer to arbalest. Those three are basically the three main ones, at least for 1v1 Age of Empires. There's a lot of other units, of course, all the infantry stuff, all the siege, all the different units like elephant archers, eagles. But as far as mainline units, you expect to see a lot of archers. It's simply one of the most generic openings and one of the most generic mid-game units you can go for. However, at NEC5, I would say like 95% of the games didn't have a big showing of archers. We only saw them in a couple games. The only time I used archers for more than just a few of them was going arbalest versus Vipers Georgians in the set we played in the group stage. Other than that, I feel like maybe a few archers here and there, but not really too much of an impact. And there's a bunch of reasons for that, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm going to go ahead and break down as to why we didn't see much from this unit. Obviously, if you're a diehard Age of Empires fan, you know that the archer unit is usually the main unit for pro tournaments, especially LAN events. When there's zero ping, the pros love abusing the archer micro, but this time it was not the case. Cavalry and infantry took more of a primary role this NAC. However, some other range units took some precedence. But first, let's talk about why we didn't see the archer and the crossbow. The number one reason, and the main reason on the list here by far, is unfortunately the bad pathing and the regrouping behavior of range units. This is something that was completely new to this patch, and it's something that has nothing to do with the gameplay or balance or anything like that. It simply has to do with how units are moving, which seems to change every patch, which is very annoying and very strange. But this particular patch that we had to play an S tier tournament on basically made archers unmovable, unmicroable. If you move with your archers and then you hit and then you run and then you hit and you run, what happens is normally you hit and you walk away a few tiles and then you hit again and you kind of create distance as you're doing damage. This is called basic micro. In this patch, you hit, and as you try to run away, they regroup amongst themselves for no particular reason and basically don't move. They move like half a tile instead of moving 3 tiles because they spent the first 2 tiles regrouping, and just the front line goes back to the back line, and then they move around, they shift around, and then they start walking. And obviously in pro Age of Empires, if you're stuck in the same spot for more than a second, you're losing a couple units. And so this bad pathing and this regrouping behavior wasn't like, oh, a one-time thing, it could happen. This was the normal behavior. This is what was expected from your archers, which is ridiculous. The fact that you're bound to take 1 or 2 units, like extra losses, just because your units are, regrouping on each other instead of running away, made archer play extremely unreliable. And I'm not going to say that it's completely useless. You can still NAS archers, you can still patrol them, and in certain situations, the regrouping doesn't hurt you as much, but it's just the added risk that you have to take as a player of knowing that your archers won't move like you want them to. If you go back, they go forward. Or sorry, if you want to run away, they go towards the opponent first before running away. This radical and just weird behavior, it just felt really hard to control, and it's just not worth taking the risk. On top of that, if you factor the archer playstyle, which is to have a big group of archers that you basically never lose, or you're playing very cautiously with them, and then you add regrouping to that equation, and suddenly you could lose your archer mass out of nowhere, and it's not even your fault. It's just not an appealing playstyle and not an appealing strategy to go into a huge tournament with. And the last thing that's worth mentioning as well is that up against mangonels, usually you have to be razor sharp with your micro, and pro players are really good at dodging mangonel shots with their Expo, same with scorpions and whatnot. However, with the regrouping behavior, not only can you not reliably dodge mangonel shots, oftentimes your units will run into the mangonel shots, thus losing your entire army, and it's once again out of your control entirely. This bad pathing and regrouping absolutely nuked the archer play at NEC5. But it's not the only reason. I've actually got 4 more reasons that I will restate. It is the absolute biggest reason on the list. All right, moving on to the second reason that I think is reasonable to talk about. There were some big Expo Arbalest nerfs about a year ago or 8 to 10 months ago at this point, and I've always felt like these nerfs were harsh, but I've never felt that they were too harsh, but potentially, I'm going to put this out there, potentially those nerfs were maybe a little too harsh. It basically made the Expo upgrade plus 100 resources, I believe, more expensive, and then the Arbalest upgrade plus, I think, 150 resources. Don't quote me on the exact numbers, but it's around there. So the Expo player, by going from Archer to Arbalest, needs like an extra 300 resources to do it nowadays compared to before. And I feel like this nerf might have been a little bit harsh. So potentially a proposition, if first we should fix the bad pathing, then see what happens. But if archers are still not seeing any play, potentially we cut this nerf in half. You take half of the cost of the Expo nerf. So if it was 100 resources, you make it 50 resources. So it's still more expensive than it once was. And then you take the Arbalest resources. If it was 200 extra, you make that 100 extra. And it's like you kind of split the nerf in half and see where archers will fall in after that. It's just a proposition. It's hard to say if this will be needed or if this will help at all, but it's something that could bring archer play more towards the front line of the meta, if that's even the goal in the first place. But my opinion is we fix the pathing first and then we see if any nerfs need to be added or tweaked, because honestly, even after this nerf, we still saw a lot of Expo and Arbalest play, so it's not like this nerf is at the forefront of the issue. But there's still a few other factors that are in play, and they all kind of stacked up at NAC5, making archer play not very viable. So up at number 3, I have the new civilizations, Georgians and Armenians, and they both kind of do really well against archer play. And let me tell you why. It's not because of their tech tree or their units, it's simply because of the fortified church. Now, Expo play is very timing based. You want to go in early castle age, get that Expo spike, get the upgrades in Expo bodkin arrow, and then you try to attack your opponent and do damage. If you don't do damage, then you don't really have mobility, you're not really controlling the game, and so you're kind of reliant on that power spike. And the new civilizations have the fortified church, which builds incredibly fast. It's just a monastery and it acts as a tower that doesn't cost any stone, so they're able to drop that down at the most important part of their base, defend that for sure, and even get a couple monks or warrior priests to help, defend if there's any siege push coming or anything like that. And then if they so wanted to, they can easily drop another siege workshop or more town centers to defend their base against crossbows. And so crossbows had a really hard time hitting these newer civilizations, which played a minor role in why we didn't see as many archers. Another big issue is the maps in NAC5. They were more or less like long range maps. Like there's a lot of outcrop, enclosed, a lot of Copenhagen, a lot of arena. It's either maps that you start with stone walls or they're just simply long range in general, favoring cavalry play over archer play. And so that was a big factor as to why players tended to go towards cavalry. And if they wanted range units, what we saw players going for was actually cavalry archers and hand cannoneer as their main range options instead of the archer line. This was really beautiful to see because we saw players adapting in real time to the situation. Instead of being stubborn and going for the Expo line that's unreliable, they went for the cav archer line, which still has the regrouping problem, by the way. But since it's on a horse, if it regroups, it's not going to cost you as much because you can always just run away. So while the unit can be annoying to micro, you're at least not going to be stuck in the mud and get your army cleaned up every time your army does that regrouping phenomenon. And so we saw a lot of hand cannoneer play in Imperial Age. We saw a lot of Hindustani with 9 range hand cannoneer. Burgundians were super popular. We also saw Hindustani cav archers. We saw Japanese cav archers and plenty more. Those were the 2 main range options after the first main range option, which is the archer line, didn't quite cut it. We obviously saw tons of skirmishers, but they fit a different purpose altogether. So that pretty much sums it up as to why we didn't see too much archer play at NAC5. My opinion though is that it's nice to see different metas come up, and I love to see different unit choices, players adapting to what is the best and optimal strategy in every given tournament. And we see that even throughout the tournament, the meta will adapt. The best strategies will be discovered and players will adapt on the fly, which is super cool to see. However, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth to know that the meta shifts that are happening and the different strategies that players come up with is not because of the maps or not because of the situation, but rather because of pathing, something that doesn't have anything to do with the strategy game, doesn't have anything to do with civilization choice or civilization balance or the map choice or the map balance. It's something completely out of the strategy aspect of AoE2 and is basically just a mistake that's left into the patch of a huge tournament. That feels like it should never be a thing, and that definitely leaves a sour taste in my mouth. All that said though, we managed to survive NAC5 and there was a lot of different strategies and cool approaches and epic games nonetheless, so it's not like it's the end of the world. Also, speaking of balance changes, I might do a balance wish list this Saturday, or maybe even balance prediction this Saturday and make that a video. And if you guys are excited about that, be sure to tune in this Saturday. And if it's really good and if it gets a lot of views, because remember, views are the most important thing, I need views, then we can make it a monthly thing. Potentially, guys, potentially. But I'll do a balance wish list this Saturday and we'll go from there. I'll give you guys all my balance takes, what I think should happen, what I would want to see, and what I think is obvious and what should definitely have been changed if it hasn't been been changed already in the past year. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys Saturday if you're interested in the balance talk, and I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.